February 14th, 1943. 18 kilometers northwest of Stalingrad, Soviet defensive line. The snow doesn't fall here, it crawls. Each flake drifts sideways on a wind so cold it turns breath into ice before it leaves your lungs. In the pre-dawn darkness, the temperature has dropped to -30, 2 degrees Celsius, and the landscape has become a blanket of white silence, broken only by the occasional crack of distant artillery. Somewhere in this frozen wasteland, beneath 3 feet of fresh powder, 22-year-old Junior Sergeant Natalia Sokolova presses her cheek against the wooden stock of her Mosin Nagant rifle and watches a German machine gun position through her PU. Scope. 400 meters away. 3 soldiers visible. The one on the left is smoking. A fatal mistake. She can see the embers' faint glow even at this distance. Her finger rests on the trigger. Not pulling. Not yet. Just waiting. This is the part most snipers get wrong. They think patience means finding the perfect nest, settling in, and picking targets until someone finds you or the light changes. But Natalia learned something in her first 3 weeks on this godforsaken front. The moment you fire, you become the hunted. Every sniper who died in her unit, 7 in January alone, died because they fell in love with a position. They'd find a bombed outbuilding, a burned tank, a perfect ridge, and they'd stay. 1 shot, 2 shots, maybe 10. Then a mortar round, or a counter-sniper's bullet, or a grenade from a patrol they never saw coming. So she built 3 positions instead of 1. Not nests. That's the wrong word. Nests are for staying. These are shallow graves she can disappear into and abandon in seconds. Each one scraped into the snow in a triangle formation, 15 meters between points. Each barely deep enough to hide her prone silhouette. She spent 4 hours carving them last night, using the blade of her entrenching tool to scrape away snow so slowly, so quietly, that even the field mice didn't scatter. Then she smoothed the edges, let fresh snow drift over the disturbed patches, and waited for morning. Now she's in the western pit, the one with a clean line of sight to that machine gun nest. She exhales slowly, squeezes. The rifle kicks into her shoulder, a familiar violence, almost comforting. Through the scope, she sees the smoking soldier's head snap back. He's dead before his cigarette hits the snow. But she's already moving. No time to admire the shot. No time to confirm the kill. That's what gets you killed. She rolls left, keeping her body flat, using her elbows and knees to slither through the snow like a serpent. Her white camouflage smock, stitched from bedsheets and parachute silk, blends perfectly with the terrain. 20 seconds of crawling, and she's in the northern pit. Rifle repositioned. Snow pulled over her back and legs like a blanket. From the German position, the reaction is exactly what she expected. Chaos. Someone screaming. An officer probably barking orders. The machine gun opens up. Ducka, dacka, dacka, dacka. Tearing into the western pit, where she was 30 seconds ago. Tracer rounds arc through the pre-dawn gloom, stitching a line of destruction through empty snow. They're shooting at nothing. At a memory. At a ghost. She counts to 40. Lets them waste ammunition. Lets them think they got her. Then she finds her second target. A soldier has broken from cover, running low toward what he thinks is her position, rifle raised. He's brave. Stupid and brave. Through her scope, she can see the vapor clouds puffing from his mouth as he runs. Can see the frost caking his eyebrows. Can see the fear in his eyes that he's trying to bury under training and adrenaline. She leads him by 1/2 meter. Exhales, squeezes. The second shot echoes across the steppe. The runner collapses mid-stride, sliding face, first into the snow, and Natalia is already moving again. This time to the eastern pit. Low crawl, elbows and knees. The Mosin Nagant cradled in her arms like a sleeping child. Fresh snow falling now, covering her tracks before they can freeze into evidence. The Germans are panicking. She can hear them shouting. Not words, just noise. Confusion and terror bleeding together into a sound that makes her stomach twist. Not from guilt. She stopped feeling guilty after the first dozen, but from something else. Something colder. The knowledge that she's not fighting soldiers anymore. She's fighting mathematics. Distance plus angle plus wind plus heartbeat equals death. Over and over. An equation she solves with lead and powder. From her new position, she can see them reorganizing. An NCO, Unteroffizier, probably grabbing soldiers, pointing. Trying to establish overlapping fields of fire. He's good, competent. In another context, she might respect him. She puts a bullet through his chest. 3 shots. 3 angles, 3 bodies. To the Germans, it looks like 3 different snipers working in coordination. She can see them reacting to that assumption, splitting their attention, dividing their fire, trying to cover 3 positions simultaneously. Their sound-ranging equipment, primitive as it is, probably confirms it. Shots coming from 3 distinct locations, meters apart. They have no idea they're fighting one woman with a simple, insane plan. Never be where you just were. The machine gun swivels, firing blindly into the eastern pit. But she's already pulled herself flat, arms over her head, letting the snow-covered mound she built in front of the position absorb the incoming rounds. The gunner is firing high. They always do when they're scared. Bullets crack overhead like frozen lightning. Then silence. They're conserving ammunition now, getting smart, or trying to. Natalia doesn't move, doesn't breathe heavy, just waits, motionless, while fresh snow drifts across her back, and the temperature continues its slow, murderous descent toward -40. This is the real trick, not the shooting, not the crawling, the waiting. The ability to become so still, so patient, so utterly absent from your own body that you're not a person anymore. Just another irregularity in the landscape, a lump of snow, a frozen shadow, nothing worth investigating. She'll wait here for an hour if she has to. 2 hours. However long it takes for them to decide the threat has passed. And then she'll start again. January 3rd, 1943. 6 weeks earlier. Soviet sniper training camp, 40 kilometers behind the front. The instructor's name was Senior Lieutenant Drozdov, and he had the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from granite with a dull chisel. All hard angles and old scars. He stood in front of the assembled sniper candidates, breath fogging in the frigid air of the unheated barn they used for classroom instruction, and said the words that would save Natalia's life. The sniper who stays in position after a successful shot is a dead sniper. Remember this. Natalia remembered. But she also remembered what happened next. They were supposed to remember it as doctrine, as gospel. But in practice, out in the meat-grinder west of Stalingrad, doctrine met reality, and reality won every single time. Because the truth was, good positions were rare. A sight line that gave you clear shots at enemy movement without exposing you to return fire. Maybe 1 in 100 spots offered that. And when you found one, a collapsed wall, a shell crater with the right angle, a rise in the terrain that gave you 10 extra meters of visibility, you didn't abandon it after 1 kill. You couldn't. Finding another position meant crawling through open ground, exposing yourself, burning daylight. So snipers stayed. They rationalized it. Just one more shot. The Germans haven't pinpointed me yet. I can get 2 more before I displace. And then they died. Natalia learned this on her 4th day in the field. She'd been paired with a veteran named Corporal Dmitry Volkov, 31 years old, 86 confirmed kills, a legend in the regiment. They'd set up in the 2nd floor of a destroyed schoolhouse. Firing through a window, someone had thoughtfully draped with torn curtains to break up their silhouette. Perfect position. Dmitry got 3 kills in 20 minutes. Clean shots, textbook form. He was lining up a 4th when the tank shell came through the wall. Natalia had been 10 meters away, observing through binoculars, learning his technique. The explosion threw her backward into a pile of rubble that used to be a bookshelf. When the dust cleared and her hearing came back, mostly came back, she found what was left of Dmitry scattered across the room in pieces too small to justify collecting. The Germans had spotted his muzzle flash, called in armor, solved the problem with high explosives. 1 perfect position, 4 shots, 1 dead sniper. She saw it happen again 3 days later. Different sniper, different position, same result. And again a week after that. The pattern was cleared. The better the position, the more likely someone had used it before, and the more likely the Germans were already watching it. Every burned-out building, every convenient pile of rubble, every obvious ridge, they were all pre-sighted, pre-ranged, pre-targeted. Death traps with good sight lines. The instructors back at camp had said, displace after every shot, but they'd never explained where to displace to. That's what Natalia was thinking about on February 12th, 2 days before she'd put her plan into practice for the first time. She was in a dugout 20 meters behind the front line, cleaning her rifle, 2nd time that day, and watching a junior sergeant named Petrov prepare for a night patrol. He was packing 3 different sidearms, a Tokarev pistol on his hip, a 2nd in an ankle holster, and a 3rd tucked into his pack. Why 3? She asked. Petrov looked at her like she'd asked why snow was cold. Because when the first one jams or runs dry, I need a backup, and when the backup fails, I need a backup for the backup. He grinned, missing 2 front teeth, and added, the Germans expect 1 pistol. They don't expect 3. It was a joke, Gailo's humor from a man who probably had 2 weeks to live. But it planted a seed. They don't expect 3. That night, instead of sleeping, Natalia sat in the dugout and thought about triangles. Not the geometric kind, the tactical kind. Fields of fire, overlapping positions. The way the Germans set up their machine guns in mutual support, each covering the blind spots of the others. What if she did that with sniper positions? Not to create overlapping fire, but to create overlapping confusion. 1 sniper, 3 positions. Fire from one, displace to the next, fire again. Make them think they're facing a coordinated team. Make them divide their attention, waste their ammunition. 2nd, guess their own intelligence. It was insane. She knew that even as the idea took shape, every manual, every instructor, every veteran she'd talked to said the same thing. Dig in deep, camouflage well, stay hidden. The whole point of sniping was to be invisible, and invisibility meant commitment to a position. You didn't half build 3 shallow pits. You built 1 perfect hide and made it your fortress. But fortresses got shelled, perfect hides got spotted, and snipers kept dying. The next morning, she approached Senior Lieutenant Drozdov with her idea. He listened, face expressionless, while she explained the 3 pit triangle system, how she'd rotate between positions, how it would confuse enemy spotters and sound ranging teams, how it solved the displacement problem without sacrificing firing opportunities. When she finished, Drozdov was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You'll be exposed during displacement, completely exposed, only for seconds at a time, and only at ground level, with snow cover. You'll have no overhead protection, no structural cover. A single mortar round landing anywhere in that triangle will kill you. A single mortar round would kill me in a traditional hide too. Traditional hides have escape routes, reinforced positions. Your shallow pits have nothing. Traditional hides are obvious. Mine won't be." Drozdov studied her face, like he was trying to read something written in a language he'd forgotten. Finally, he said, "This is the worst idea I've heard from a sniper candidate in 14 years of instruction." Natalia's heart sank. Then Drozdov shrugged. "But you'll probably try it anyway, so you might as well do it with my knowledge. That way, when you die, I can at least write an accurate report about what not to do." It wasn't approval, but it wasn't a direct order to stop. She took it. 2 nights later, she crawled out into no man's land with an entrenching tool and a plan everyone thought would get her killed. 4 hours of slow, silent digging in -30-degree cold. 3 pits arranged in a triangle, each position for a different firing angle on the German lines, each shallow enough that she could roll out and crawl to the next in under 30 seconds. When she finished, just before dawn, her hands were numb and her shoulders screamed from the work. She settled into the western pit, pulled snow over herself, and waited for daylight. And when the sun rose, and she saw that machine gun position 400 meters out, with its crew starting their morning routine, like they owned the world, she felt something she hadn't felt since before Dmitri died. Not hope, not quite, but something close to it. A sense that maybe, the war could be fought on her terms instead of theirs. March 22nd, 1943. German forward observation post, 700 meters east of their main defensive line. Oberleutnant Karl Richter pressed his binoculars against his eye sockets hard enough to leave marks, and swept the snowfield for the 7th time in an hour. Nothing, just white emptiness stretching to the horizon, broken only by the occasional skeletal tree and the frozen hulks of destroyed vehicles half buried in drifts. But something out there was killing his men. 6 dead in 4 days. All headshots. All at ranges exceeding 300 meters. All from what appeared to be 3 different firing positions, arranged in a rough triangular pattern. His sound ranging team, 2 corporals with directional microphones, and a competence level Richter barely trusted, insisted the shots were coming from multiple sources. 3 snipers working in coordination, they said. Soviet doctrine, they said. Classic encirclement tactics adapted for marksmen. Richter didn't believe them. 3 snipers meant 3 rifles, 3 sets of equipment, 3 bodies that needed to eat and sleep, and somehow avoid detection in an open snowfield under constant German observation. Possible? Yes. Likely? No. But if it wasn't 3 snipers, what the hell was it? Movement, sir. 2 o'clock. 400 meters. Richter swung his binoculars right. One of his machine gunners, Stuza Hoffman, was running a position rotation exactly as ordered, but doing it in daylight like an idiot. Richter opened his mouth to shout a reprimand. The crack of a rifle shot reached his ears a half second after Hoffman's head exploded in a pink mist. Contact! Northwest quadrant. Someone screamed, and then the entire observation post erupted into action. Machine guns opened up, tearing into the snowfield at a position roughly 300 meters out. Richter grabbed his range finder, called corrections, adjusted fire. They poured 200 rounds into a suspicious-looking drift, then ceased fire to assess. Silence, no return fire, no movement. Then 10 seconds later, another shot, from a completely different angle. This one came from the east. Richter watched one of his radiomen, Oberstfritter Klein, stumble backward with a hole punched through his throat. Klein hit the frozen ground, making a wet gurgling sound that would haunt Richter's sleep for weeks.
East side! East side!
The machine guns swiveled, firing at the new threat axis. Another 100 rounds into the snow. Another suspicious drift turned into a storm of flying ice and frozen earth. Cease fire. Assess. Nothing. Richter's hands were shaking. Not from cold, from rage.
Sound ranging! Where are they?
2 positions confirmed, sir!
Northwest and east-northeast?
Approximately 300 and 320 meters respectively. 2 snipers. At least 2. Working together with precision timing and overlapping fields of fire. This wasn't lucky shooting. This was coordinated, professional, lethal. And then a third shot cracked across the steppe. This one from due north. No one died this time. The bullet struck the sandbag 6 inches from Richter's head. So close he felt the pressure wave slap his cheek. He dove for cover on pure instinct, binoculars clattering from his hands. When he looked up, his men were firing in 3 different directions, simultaneously, burning through ammunition like they thought bullets were infinite. The sound, ranging team was screaming conflicting reports. The machine gunners were panicking, swinging their weapons back and forth without clear targets. And somewhere out in that pristine white hell, 3 invisible demons were making his entire forward position look like a circus run by concussed children.
Cease fire! Cease fire!
Richter's voice barely cut through the chaos, but eventually his men stopped shooting. The sudden silence felt louder than the gunfire. For 5 full minutes, nothing happened. The snowfield sat empty and innocent under the pale morning sun. Birds even started calling again. Some kind of winter finch that hadn't gotten the memo about the war. Then Richter's second, in command, Feldwebel Cross, crawled up beside him. Orders, sir. Richter wanted to say something decisive, something commanding. Instead, he said, how many did we lose? 3 confirmed dead. Hoffman, Klein, and Bauer. Bauer, I didn't see. The 3rd shot, sir. Hit him in the chest while we were all shooting blind. 3 dead. 3 shooters, or 1 impossibly mobile ghost playing tricks with positions. Either way, unacceptable. Get me counter-sniper support, Richter said. I want our best marksmen out here by nightfall, and get a mortar team sighted on all 3 firing positions. Next time we take contact, I want high explosive raining down before their 2nd shot. Cross nodded and crawled away to make it happen. But Ritter kept staring at that snowfield, and a cold certainty settled into his gut. Mortars wouldn't help. Snipers wouldn't help. Because whatever was out there wasn't fighting like a normal sniper. Normal snipers had patterns, routines, predictable behaviors born from doctrine and training. This was something else. 430 meters northwest. Natalia lay motionless in her western pit and listened to the Germans panic. Her heart was hammering. Adrenaline from the close call with that officer's head. Satisfaction from 3 successful shots, and the cold mathematical assessment of ammunition expenditure. 3 rounds fired, 3 kills achieved. 100% efficiency. The numbers helped, made it feel less like murder and more like accounting. She'd watched them shoot at her positions, watched them waste hundreds of rounds on empty snow, watched them spin in circles like confused dogs chasing their tails. Good. Confusion was a weapon. Fear was a weapon. And right now, she was deploying both more effectively than any rifle round. The Germans thought they were hunting 3 snipers. She could tell from their fire patterns, the way they split their attention, the frantic radio traffic she couldn't understand, but could definitely interpret. 3 threats meant 3 responses, meant divided focus, meant mistakes. And mistakes, out here, meant death. She'd been refining the technique for 6 weeks now. The initial triangle system worked, but she'd learned nuances. The importance of slight elevation differences between pits. Even 10 centimeters could change how sound propagated, making positions seem farther apart than they were. The value of firing in irregular intervals. Too regular, and pattern recognition kicked in. The necessity of absolute stillness between shots. Not just hiding, but becoming genuinely inanimate. She'd learned to slow her breathing to 4 breaths per minute, to ignore the screaming pain of frozen fingers, to piss herself rather than shift position. The instructors back at camp had been right about one thing. It was insane, but it was working. Her kill count had reached 40, 7 confirmed. More than any other sniper in the regiment, male or female. More than veterans with 2 years of frontline experience. And she'd been at the front for barely 2 months. Senior Lieutenant Drozdov had stopped calling her plan the worst idea he'd ever heard. Now, he just called it Sokolova's triangle, and shook his head in a way that might have been respect or might have been confusion. Hard to tell with Drozdov. Other snipers were starting to ask questions. How are you surviving? How are you getting so many kills without taking counter fire? She didn't answer, partly because explaining the technique to people who thought it was crazy seemed pointless. Partly because she'd realized something crucial. Her system worked because it was unique. If every sniper started using 3 pit triangles, the Germans would adapt. They'd develop counter tactics. They'd learn to recognize the pattern. But as long as she was the only one doing it, she was fighting a war the Germans didn't know how to win. Ahead in the German lines, she could see movement, repositioning, reinforcing. They were getting smarter, more cautious. Good. Caution slowed them down, made them less aggressive, gave the Soviet defensive lines breathing room. That's what Senior Lieutenant Drozdov had said last week, after she'd submitted her 14th after-action report in as many days. You're not just killing Germans, Sokolova. You're terrifying them. That's worth 10 times the body count. She hadn't known how to respond to that. Terror wasn't something she thought about. She thought about angles and distances and wind speed, and the specific mechanics of a Mosin, Nagant's trigger pull. But maybe Drozdov was right. Maybe the kills mattered less than the fear. Either way, she'd be back tomorrow. Same triangle, same technique, same ghost appearing in 3 places at once, until they found her, or the war ended, or she ran out of snow to hide in. Whichever came first. November 8, 1943. No man's land, 16 kilometers northeast of Gomel. The bayonet punched into the snow 11 centimeters from Natalia's left eye. She didn't flinch, didn't blink, didn't breathe. Her body had stopped being a body 40 minutes ago when she'd heard the German patrol approaching. Now she was ice, frozen earth, a geological feature that had existed since the last ice age and would exist long after this war turned to dust. The bayonet withdrew with a soft sound of disturbed snow. She heard boots crunching, heard German voices. 3, maybe 4 soldiers, speaking in low tones that vibrated with tension and exhaustion. They were close enough that she could smell them. Unwashed wool, gun oil, tobacco, and the distinct copper, penny scent of fear, sweat. They were searching the triangle, her triangle, the one she'd used for 6 days straight, longer than she should have, but the hunting had been too good and she'd gotten greedy. 31 kills in 6 days, an average of more than 5 per day. Unsustainable numbers that attracted exactly the kind of attention she'd spent 9 months trying to avoid. And now that attention was standing 3 meters away, stabbing random patches of snow with bayonets, looking for the ghosts their officers had sent them to find. Another stab, this one closer to her right shoulder. The blade punched through the crust of ice she'd carefully layered over herself and stopped, maybe 20 centimeters from her body. If she'd been positioned slightly differently, if her shoulder had been rolled forward instead of pressed flat, the blade would have found meat. One of them said something in German. Nothing here. Another voice answered. Keep searching. More footsteps. More probing. She could hear them working in a grid pattern, systematically stabbing every suspicious drift, every irregular mound. Professional. Thorough. Exactly the kind of patrol that got snipers killed. A third stab landed between her legs, so close to her inner thigh that she felt the vibration through the frozen ground. And still she didn't move. This was the part that separated snipers who survived from snipers who filled mass graves. Any amateur could shoot. Any halfway competent soldier could camouflage a position and wait for targets. But this absolute, inhuman stillness in the face of imminent death, this required something else. Something that couldn't be taught in training camps or found in field manuals. It required the ability to become absent from your own survival instinct. Natalia had discovered this ability by accident back in March, when a German observation plane had flown directly over her position at an altitude low enough that she could see the pilot's face. Every nerve in her body had screamed run, but she'd locked herself down through sheer willpower, had convinced herself, in that moment, that she was already dead, that the plane's machine gun had already found her, already torn her apart, and this was just her corpse lying in the snow, waiting for someone to find it. The pilot never saw her, flew right past, and she'd realized. Fear is attachment to being alive. Remove the attachment, remove the fear. It was almost zen, almost spiritual. Except there was nothing peaceful about lying in frozen darkness, while foreign soldiers stabbed the ground around you, like they were testing a mattress for lumps. 4th stab. 5th. 6th. One of them landed so close to her rifle, buried in snow beside her, wrapped in white cloth, that the blade actually scraped against the barrel with a faint metallic sound. The stabbing stopped. The German voice said, "Wait, there's something here." Natalia's pulse, which had been beating at maybe 30 beats per minute, didn't change, couldn't change. She'd locked her cardiovascular system into a state of near hibernation through breathing techniques a Soviet combat medic had taught her. 4 breaths per minute, heart rate locked to match, metabolism slowed to a crawl. She could hear the soldier kneeling, brushing snow away with gloved hands, getting closer to the rifle, closer to her. If he found the Mosin Nagant, he'd keep digging, and 30 seconds later he'd find her. Another German voice. "What is it?" The first voice answered. "I don't know, maybe just a branch." More brushing. The scrape of leather against metal. She could hear his breathing now. Fast and shallow, adrenaline spiked. He was scared. Knew that finding a rifle meant a sniper was nearby. Knew that nearby could mean within arm's reach. His hand touched the stock of her rifle. And then, from somewhere to the east, a single rifle shot cracked across the steppe. The Germans reacted instantly, dropping flat, shouting, bringing weapons up. The one who'd been kneeling beside her rifle scrambled away, abandoning his search in favor of cover. One of them shouted,
Contact! East side!
More shots. A firefight developing, maybe 300 meters away. Soviet infantry engaging a German patrol, or vice versa. She couldn't tell and didn't care, because it was pulling the searchers away from her position. The Germans grouped up, moving in tactical formation toward the sound of gunfire. She heard their boots crunching through snow, heard their voices fading, counted to 60, then to 60 again, then a third time. Only then did she allow herself to breathe normally. Her hands were shaking, not from cold, from adrenaline finally flooding back into her system. The bayonet stabs had come within centimeters of finding her. The soldier's hand had literally touched her rifle. Another 10 seconds of searching, and she would have been discovered. And discovered meant captured or killed, probably both. She gave herself 2 minutes to shake it off. 2 minutes to let the adrenaline burn through her system and leave her cold and functional again. Then she slowly, carefully, quietly extracted herself from the pit. The snow around her position looked like someone had attacked it with a pitchfork. Dozens of stab marks, a grid pattern of puncture wounds. If she'd been positioned in any of the statistically likely spots, centered in the pit, curled for warmth, she'd be bleeding out right now. Instead, she'd been pressed against the northeast edge, flattened beyond comfort, limbs arranged in a configuration that no human would naturally choose. Uncomfortable, painful, alive. She gathered her rifle, brushed the snow from its cloth wrapping, and lo, crawled toward the eastern pit. The triangle was compromised now. The Germans knew, or strongly suspected, that someone was operating in this area. They'd be back with more patrols, more systematic searches, maybe dogs. Time to relocate. But before she left, she turned back to look at the western pit one last time. At the bayonet holes, stitched through the snow like a connect, the dots puzzle that almost spelled her death. This was the 4th time she'd come within meters of German patrols. The 2nd time they'd actively searched her position. And every time, the triangle had saved her. Not because the positions were better hidden than traditional hides, but because the Germans expected to find one sniper in one position. They searched in patterns designed to find singular threats. They never expected someone insane enough to build 3 half-assed pits and rotate between them like a shell game played with human lives. Senior Lieutenant Drozdov had been right. It was the worst idea he'd ever heard. But bad ideas that worked were still better than good ideas that got you killed. She crawled east through the snow, leaving the compromised triangle behind, and started planning the next one. By her count, she had 273 confirmed kills, 36 to go until she hit 300. And then, she had no idea. The war would keep going. The Germans would keep dying. And she would keep being a ghost that appeared in 3 places at once, impossible and unkillable, until the mathematics of war finally caught up with her. But not today. Today, she disappeared. January 17th, 1944. Soviet Forward Headquarters, 23 kilometers west of Vitebsk. The map on Senior Lieutenant Drozdov's desk had a red triangle drawn on it in grease pencil. Inside the triangle, written in neat Cyrillic script, were the words "Triangle of Death." Natalia stared at it while Drozdov poured 2 small glasses of vodka from a bottle that probably predated the war. Outside, the wind howled through the gaps in the farmhouse walls they were using as a temporary command post. Inside, a pot belly stove radiated heat that barely pushed the temperature above freezing. "The Germans named it," Drozdov said, sliding 1 glass across the desk to her. "We intercepted field communications last week. Their forward units have standing orders to avoid a specific sector of no man's land. Your sector." He tapped the red triangle. "They think it's haunted by 3 cooperating snipers. The 3 ghosts of the triangle. Command wants me to tell you to stop. You're drawing too much attention. Counter, sniper assets are being diverted to hunt you specifically." Natalia picked up the vodka glass, but didn't drink. "Am I being ordered to stop?" Drozdov was quiet for a moment, studying her face the way he'd studied it back in January when she'd first proposed the insane idea that had somehow kept her alive for 11 months. Finally, he shook his head. "No. You're being asked to consider the risks. 309 confirmed kills. Sokolova. You've exceeded the lifetime totals of snipers who fought for years. You've proven your point. Whatever it was you needed to prove, to yourself, to the instructors who called you crazy, to the men who thought a woman couldn't do this job. You've proven it. Now the question is, how much further do you push before the law of averages catches up?" It was the most words she'd heard Drozdov string together in 11 months. And the strange thing was, she didn't have a good answer. Why did she keep going back? The triangle technique worked. That was proven beyond doubt. Her survival this long was proof. But survival and success were different things. Every day in the field was another roll of dice weighted toward death. Eventually, the dice would land wrong. A patrol she didn't hear. A counter sniper with better patience. A mortar round landing in the center of her triangle while she was mid-crawl. "I don't know how to stop," she said finally. It was the most honest thing she'd said in months. Drozdov nodded like he'd expected that answer. "Then don't stop, but change sectors. Rotate your area of operations. The triangle of death is burned. Every German within 10 kilometers knows to avoid it or treat it like a death sentence. Find new hunting grounds. Build new triangles. Keep them guessing." He raised his glass. "To bad ideas that work." Natalia raised hers. "To being underestimated." They drank. The vodka burned going down. Good burn, clean burn, the kind that reminded you that you were still capable of feeling things. When she set the glass down, Drozdov pulled out a folder. Official-looking, stamped with Soviet military seals. "This is why I actually called you here. High Command wants to study your technique. They're calling it mobile triangulation sniping, and they want to incorporate it into field manuals. You'll need to train instructors, demonstrate the method, maybe even write a technical document." The idea of writing anything made Natalia want to crawl back into a snow pit and stay there. "I'm a sniper, not an instructor. You're whatever the Red Army needs you to be," Drozdov said, but his tone was softer than the words. "And right now, what we need is to multiply your effectiveness. 1 sniper with 300 kills is valuable. 50 snipers with your survival rate is war-winning." He wasn't wrong. The mathematics were obvious. If her technique could keep even half the snipers in her regiment alive twice as long, the cumulative effect would be devastating to German morale and operational capability. But the thought of teaching the triangle system, of taking the desperate, improvised madness that had kept her alive and turning it into doctrine, felt like killing something fragile. The technique worked because it was unique, because the Germans hadn't adapted to it yet. Spread it too wide, and it would become just another tactic, predictable, counterable. When would this training start? She asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. High Command is still working out the details. Drozdov leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. Until then, you're back on active duty. Different sector, same work. Try not to die before you pass on what you know. Natalia stood, nodded, and turned to leave. Sokolova. She stopped at the door. The instructors who called your idea crazy. Drozdov's scarred face twisted into something that might have been a smile. They're the ones who'll be learning from you now. Enjoy that. She did smile at that. Small, brief, but genuine. February 3rd, 1944. New sector, 18 kilometers south of the previous triangle. Fresh snow, fresh positions, fresh targets. Natalia lay in the western pit of her new triangle and watched a German supply convoy unload equipment 400 meters away. 6 soldiers visible, more probably inside the trucks. Math said she could get 3 before they scattered. Maybe 4 if they panicked in the right direction. Her finger rested on the trigger. Not pulling, not yet. Just waiting. This would be kill number 312, or 13, or 14, depending on how the next 60 seconds played out. The numbers had stopped meaning much after 300. No, they were just data points. Evidence that the technique worked. Evidence that patience and adaptability beat strength and tradition. Evidence that sometimes the craziest ideas come from people everyone underestimates. She thought about the German soldiers who'd stabbed the snow around her in November, about the counter-sniper teams that had hunted the 3 ghosts for months, about the field commanders who'd named her territory the Triangle of Death and warned their men to avoid it. They'd been hunting 3 snipers, 3 distinct threats working in coordination. They never understood they were fighting one woman who refused to be where they expected. The wind shifted. Fresh snow started falling. Good. Snow-covered tracks, muffled sound, reduced visibility. Snow was a sniper's friend. Natalia exhaled slowly. Squeezed. The rifle kicked. Through the scope, she saw the first German drop. And then she was moving. Rolling left, low, crawling, vanishing into the white landscape, like she'd never existed at all. Behind her, the Germans shouted and fired at empty positions. Ahead of her, the northern pit waited, quiet and patient and invisible, just like her. Just like the ghost that appeared in 3 places at once and refused to die. The war would go on. The killing would go on. But on this frozen morning in February 1944, in a landscape that had become her cathedral and her hunting ground, Natalia Sokolova was doing exactly what she'd proven everyone wrong to do. Surviving, adapting, winning, one impossible shot at a time. But here's the question that haunts historians to this day. What happened to Natalia Sokolova after the war? Soviet records show she survived until 1944, and then nothing. No discharge papers, no medal ceremony, no post-war interviews. She simply vanished, just like she did in those snowfields, leaving behind only her kill count and a technique that's still classified in some military archives. Did she die in a battle the Soviets never recorded? Was she reassigned to operations too secret to document? Or did the woman who became a ghost in war choose to stay a ghost in peace? Some say her triangle method was so effective, so brutal, that even her own command wanted it buried. Others whisper she's in documents we'll never see. Files locked behind clearances that won't expire for another 50 years. What do you think happened to the ghost? If you want more stories about the soldiers, spies, and secrets that World War II tried to erase, you're in the right place. This is www to Forgotten 45, where we hunt down the 45 most classified, covered up, and deliberately forgotten operations of the war. Hit that subscribe button, because next week's story, it involves a Nazi defector, a briefcase full of maps, and a 17-year-old French girl who might have changed D-Day, but you've never heard her name. Drop a comment. Tell us, should Natalia's story have stayed classified? Or do we deserve to know what our heroes really did in the snow? WW2, Forgotten 45. The stories they didn't want you to find.